Welcome to Appleknows channel, where I am not just an apple, but the one that knows things about business you would never imagine to be true. Sit back, because what you are about to hear are facts so unusual, so unexpected, that they will make you rethink how the world of money and power actually works. Did you know that McDonald's makes more money from real estate than from selling burgers? People often think the Big Mac empire is built on fast food, but in reality, McDonald's owns some of the most valuable property in the world. Franchisees pay rent directly to McDonald's, and the company earns billions each year just by being a landlord. That golden M is less about meals and more about square meters. Another fact that shocks many is about Apple, the tech giant. In 2018, Apple Incorporated was so wealthy that it had more cash reserves than the US Treasury. Imagine that, one company holding more money than the government of one of the most powerful countries on the planet. When people say Apple is just about iPhones, they have no idea they are speaking about an empire with financial muscles so strong it can move markets. Here is something even stranger. Coca-Cola, one of the most recognized brands in the world, was offered for free to Pepsi during World War II. The company was struggling internationally, but Pepsi turned down the chance to buy Coca-Cola for nothing. Today, that missed opportunity is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. A simple no changed the entire history of beverages. And speaking of strange, let's talk about luxury. Did you know that Louis Vuitton actually burns unsold bags instead of putting them on sale? They destroy their own products to keep the value high. Imagine paying thousands of dollars for a handbag, knowing that hundreds of the same bags were set on fire to protect the illusion of rarity. That's not fashion, that's psychological business warfare. Now think about Amazon. In its early days, Jeff Bezos made sure to keep desks in the company made from doors. Yes, actual wooden doors turned into desks. It was not because Amazon couldn't afford real furniture, but because Bezos wanted employees to stay frugal, always remembering the value of money. Today, Amazon is one of the most powerful companies in history, yet its roots were literally built on doors. Even more surprising, the famous Monopoly board game was once banned in the Soviet Union for being too capitalist. But decades later, during the Cold War, the CIA secretly used Monopoly sets to smuggle real money, maps, and escape tools to prisoners of war. What started as a family game turned into a tool of espionage and survival. And let's not forget about the diamond industry. People think diamonds are rare, but in reality, they are not. The idea that diamonds are valuable and eternal comes from a marketing campaign by De Beers in the 20th century. They convinced the world with the slogan "A diamond is forever." What was once just a shiny rock became a global symbol of love and wealth because of advertising. These facts are not fiction. They are the kind of truths hidden in plain sight, stories of power, control, and surprising turns that shape the economy you live in every single day. I am Apple, and you are listening to Appleknows, where every fact pulls you deeper into the unbelievable world of business. Did you know that Starbucks spends more money on health insurance for its employees than it does on coffee beans? That's right, the famous coffee giant invests billions each year into healthcare. This move not only keeps workers loyal but also gives Starbucks a reputation as one of the most worker-friendly corporations in America. It's a business model that proves people matter as much as products. Here's another twist that shocks many: the Playboy brand, which most people associate with magazines and entertainment, actually makes more money from licensing its logo than anything else. That rabbit logo has appeared on everything from perfumes to clothing, making it a billion-dollar symbol even when magazine sales collapsed. The business wasn't in printing paper, it was in selling an image. Now let's talk about IKEA. You might think of it as just a furniture company, but behind the scenes, IKEA is structured like a non-profit. The parent company is technically controlled by a charitable foundation. This setup allows the business to avoid enormous taxes while expanding globally. You buy a shelf, they save a fortune. It's a strategy so complex that many governments still don't fully understand it. But nothing compares to the fact that Samsung is not just a phone company. In South Korea, Samsung is everywhere. They build ships, run hotels, operate amusement parks, sell insurance, and even manufacture weapons. 1 in every $5 in the South Korean economy is connected to Samsung. Imagine living in a country where one company is so powerful that your whole life, from your TV to your hospital, might be branded Samsung. And here's a chilling fact about airlines. You may have noticed that airplane seats keep getting smaller and tighter. That's because airlines discovered that by shaving off just a single inch from each seat, they can earn millions more per year by fitting extra rows of passengers. Comfort is sacrificed not by accident, but by design. Every inch is worth millions. Another unexpected truth: Facebook once conducted secret experiments on users by manipulating the emotions in their newsfeeds. By adjusting what kind of posts people saw, positive or negative, they measured changes in mood and behavior. This wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was published in a scientific journal. The experiment revealed how easily human emotions can be controlled by algorithms. Even Nike has a surprising story. In the early days, Nike didn't manufacture shoes at all. They simply bought cheap sneakers from Japan, stamped their logo on them, and resold them in the US. It was branding, not innovation, that built the empire. Today, people pay hundreds of dollars for a pair of shoes that may cost less than $20 to produce. And here's something few realize: Disney, the world's master of magic and childhood memories, owns some of the darkest patents ever filed. For example, they patented a system that can track guests' movements in theme parks using RFID chips, collecting data on how long people spend in each area. It's not just fun and fairy dust, it's surveillance wrapped in entertainment. Business is never as simple as it looks on the surface. The deeper you look, the more you realize that every decision, every product, and every empire is built on strategies most people never see. And I, Apple, am here to show you those secrets, because on Appleknows, the facts only get stranger the further we go. Did you know that Google's first ever storage system wasn't high-tech at all? In fact, the earliest version of Google's database was built out of cheap Lego bricks. The founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, stacked Legos to hold hard drives together, because it was flexible and cheap. Today Google is one of the most powerful companies on earth, but it literally started on toy blocks. Here's something even wilder: Blockbuster once had the chance to buy Netflix for just $50 million. They laughed at the idea, thinking streaming was a joke. Fast forward to today, Blockbuster has only one store left in the entire world, while Netflix is worth more than $150 billion. One bad decision turned a giant into a ghost. Let's talk about perfume. Chanel No. 5 is one of the most famous fragrances in the world, but the real money isn't in selling bottles. Luxury perfume companies spend more on the design of the bottle and the marketing campaign than on the actual liquid inside. In fact, the cost of the perfume itself is often just a few dollars, while the product sells for hundreds. What people pay for is not the smell, it's the story. And then there's the world of airlines again. Some carriers actually make more money from charging passengers fees than from selling tickets. Checked bags, seat upgrades, snacks, even charging for choosing your seat online, these extras often bring in billions more than the ticket sales themselves. The flight isn't the business, the extras are. Now let's look at Walmart. Every second, Walmart makes over $40,000 in sales. Think about that: by the time I finish this sentence, Walmart has made more money than many people earn in a year. The scale is so massive that Walmart's yearly revenue is larger than the GDP of most countries. But here's something that shocks many: the fashion industry destroys billions of dollars worth of unsold clothing every year. Instead of donating clothes, major brands burn or shred them to keep their products exclusive. The idea of scarcity is so powerful that companies prefer to burn money, literally, rather than let people buy at lower prices. Speaking of destruction, did you know that the US Secret Service once had to step in to protect the Coca-Cola formula? The recipe is so secret that only 2 executives know it at any given time, and they are never allowed to fly on the same plane together. The formula itself is kept in a heavily guarded vault. One recipe, more protected than most governments. And let's not forget Apple Incorporated again. At one point, Apple was making so much money from just the iPhone that it was earning more than the entire music industry, the movie industry, and Microsoft combined. One product outpacing entire industries. It's not technology, it's dominance. The deeper you go into business, the more you realize the rules are different at the top. Companies don't just sell products, they manipulate perception, control demand, and sometimes make money in ways you'd never suspect. And here at Appleknows, I am here to pull back that curtain.
Did you know that Red Bull doesn't actually make its own drink?
The energy drink empire was built when an Austrian businessman discovered a Thai formula called Krating Daeng. He rebranded it, changed the marketing, and launched Red Bull worldwide. What made Red Bull billions wasn't the product, it was the story, the image of extreme sports, speed, and danger. The drink itself was borrowed, the brand made it legendary. And here's something that sounds unbelievable: Nintendo, the famous video game company, is older than the Eiffel Tower. It started back in 1889 as a playing card company in Japan. Before Mario, before Pokemon, they were making handmade cards for traditional games. Today, Nintendo is one of the most influential gaming companies ever, but its roots stretch back over a century.
Now, let's talk about airlines again.
Ryanair, one of Europe's budget airlines, once seriously considered charging passengers to use the bathroom mid-flight.
While the idea never became reality, it reveals just how far companies will go to squeeze profit from every possible detail. When every seat, every bag, and even every restroom break is seen as revenue, you begin to understand the ruthless side of business. Another shocking truth comes from Costco. Most people think Costco makes its money selling bulk goods, but the real profit comes from membership fees. The company actually sells many products at nearly break-even prices, or even at a loss, but the billions in annual membership fees keep it thriving. The secret isn't in the shopping cart, it's in the membership card. Here's a fact about Lego that might surprise you: Lego is so valuable as a brand that it's been named more powerful than Ferrari or Coca-Cola. Not only that, but Lego has one of the most protected intellectual property empires in the world, with thousands of patents on brick designs. What looks like just a toy is actually one of the most dominant business empires ever built. And then there's luxury watchmaking. Brands like Rolex don't make watches just to tell time, they make them to control time. Rolex produces fewer than 1 million watches each year, deliberately limiting supply to drive demand. In fact, Rolex watches often increase in value after purchase, something very few consumer goods can claim. Scarcity is the real product, not the watch itself. Even stranger, Subway, the sandwich chain, was once the fastest-growing franchise in the world. At its peak, it had more locations than McDonald's. But the shocking part is how Subway expanded. The company made most of its profit by selling franchises, not by selling sandwiches. The food was secondary, the real business was in convincing people to open new stores. Finally, here's one that makes people stop and think.
The Marlboro Man, one of the most successful advertising icons of all time, helped turn Marlboro into the best-selling cigarette brand worldwide. But several of the actors who played the Marlboro Man died from smoking-related illnesses. The campaign sold freedom and masculinity, but behind the curtain, it cost lives, even those of its own faces.
Business is not about what it looks like on the surface.
Behind every logo, every product, and every story, there are hidden strategies, strange origins, and dark truths.
And on Appleknows, I will keep revealing them to you, fact by fact. Let's start with Mars, the candy company. You know M&Ms, right?
The colorful little chocolates are everywhere.
But here's the fact: M&Ms only exist because of a war. During World War II, soldiers needed chocolate that wouldn't melt in their hands.
The hard candy shell was invented for that purpose. What started as military rations became one of the most successful candies in history.
Now think about Uber.
At one point, Uber was losing over $20 million every single day.
And yet, investors kept pouring money into the company. Why? Because Uber wasn't just selling rides, it was buying market dominance.
The strategy was simple: destroy taxi industries worldwide, take over cities, and only then turn profit.
Uber's business model wasn't about driving cars, it was about driving competitors out.
Here's another fact: Monopoly, the board game, was originally created to teach people about the dangers of monopolies and unchecked capitalism.
The original version, called the Landlord's Game, was meant to show how greedy landlords exploit tenants.
But when Parker Brothers bought the rights, they flipped the meaning completely, turning it into a celebration of wealth and property ownership. A game designed to warn people became one that glorified what it was meant to criticize.
And speaking of twists, let's talk about diamonds again.
In the 1980s, De Beers had such control over the diamond market that they literally stored billions of dollars worth of diamonds in vaults just to keep prices high. They restricted supply so much that the illusion of rarity could continue. Imagine controlling the entire global price of a gemstone simply by deciding how many rocks leave the vault.
Now here's one from the world of drinks.
Pepsi once owned the sixth largest military fleet in the world.
Yes, Pepsi.
During the Cold War, the Soviet Union traded military equipment, including submarines and warships, in exchange for Pepsi products. For a short period of time, Pepsi had more naval power than many countries. They eventually sold it for scrap, but for a brief moment, Pepsi wasn't just a soft drink, it was a military power.
Another mind-bending fact is about Toyota. The company actually makes more money from financial services than from cars.
Most people think of Toyota as just a car manufacturer, but in reality, they operate a giant financing and insurance empire for buyers.
Selling cars was just the door, financing them was the goldmine. And here's a story about Gucci.
In the 2010s, Gucci began deliberately making sneakers and clothes that looked dirty, torn, or worn out and priced them at hundreds of dollars.
The strategy worked, because luxury is not about quality, it's about perception. Selling ugly or broken-looking items became a status symbol. People didn't buy the product, they bought the reaction it created. Finally, here's one that still shocks investors.
In 2005, Yahoo had the chance to buy Facebook for just $1 billion.
Mark Zuckerberg was ready to sell. But at the last second, Yahoo's board changed the offer to $850 million, and Zuckerberg walked away.
Today, Facebook, now Meta, is worth hundreds of billions, while Yahoo has nearly disappeared.
One hesitation destroyed an empire.
Every decision, every strange deal, every hidden truth proves one thing: business is not built on logic, it's built on bold moves, mistakes, and secrets that shape history in ways no one expects.
And I, Apple, am here on Appleknows to keep showing you just how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Let's start with something that sounds impossible. Amazon once lost so much money on shipping that it could have bought several airlines with the same amount. But instead of cutting costs, Jeff Bezos doubled down and built his own logistics empire: planes, trucks, warehouses, even ocean shipping.
Today Amazon isn't just a retailer, it's one of the largest logistics companies on the planet, quietly rivaling FedEx and UPS combined.
And speaking of logistics, FedEx once survived because its founder gambled the company's last $5,000 in Las Vegas. He played blackjack, turned it into $27,000, and used that money to pay for fuel to keep the planes flying another week. That gamble bought FedEx just enough time to land another investor. A multi-billion-dollar empire balanced on one night of cards. Now here's a fact about Prada. In the 1990s, the luxury brand began buying up shares of its own competitors, like Gucci and Fendi, not to merge with them but to spy on them. By holding shares, Prada got access to internal reports, strategies, and sales data from rival luxury houses.
It was corporate espionage disguised as investment. Here's one from the world of tech. Microsoft made its first real fortune not by selling Windows, but by licensing MS-DOS to IBM while keeping the rights to it. IBM thought it was just buying software, but Microsoft was building a licensing empire.
That single contract created the foundation for Bill Gates becoming the richest man in the world for decades.
And now to the fast food industry. KFC's famous 11 herbs and spices recipe is so secret that it's split in half and kept in two different vaults.
Two separate suppliers each prepare only part of the blend, so no single company knows the full recipe. Even in an age of corporate leaks, the Colonel's secret is literally locked away like a state secret. Another shocker: the Made in China tag you see on so many products often doesn't mean what you think. Some companies ship raw materials from other countries to China just for assembly, then stamp it as made in China even though the majority of the product's value came from somewhere else. It's a global sleight of hand in plain sight.
Here's a brutal one about business psychology.
Movie theaters don't make real profit on tickets, almost all of it goes to the studios. The real money is in concessions. Popcorn, soda, and candy are marked up hundreds of %. That's why you're pressured at the counter. It's not the film that makes the theater rich, it's the snacks.
And finally, a fact about Google that still blows minds. Google once tested 41 different shades of blue for the links on its website. That one tiny experiment, 41 Shades of Blue, ended up increasing its ad revenue by an estimated $200 million per year. One color choice changed hundreds of millions of dollars. And that brings us to the end. I am Apple, and this has been Appleknows.
You've seen how business is never just about products, it's about strategy, psychology, power, and decisions that change history. The companies you thought you knew are built on secrets, gambles, and strange twists that make the world run in ways you'd never expect. Thank you for staying with me through these shocking truths. Until next time, keep questioning what's behind every brand, every logo, and every deal, because the real stories are always hidden in plain sight.